I welcome the panelists, General, General Bipin is here, and Snehashree, Mukherjee. Thank you very much for being here. We'll talk to them later. Right. So in the second part, we are going to talk about the second session. We are going to talk about how India is in crosshairs of cyber attacks. It was a very interesting discussion in part one or first session. And I would like to start by, I will talk about the panelists as I introduce them, then I give them the floor. Let me begin by saying that first, all of us really need to recognize the reality of information space, the IW that is here to stay. Rather than being shy of it, I recall seeing one of the specialists. I am unable to recall her status appointment, but I recall her name. That was Dr. Ajit Man. She was somewhere in the US, one of the centers for narrative, and she explained it very nicely, saying that look, every day we all negotiate gravity. Gravity is there. It is the reality. But we don't have to learn to negotiate gravity. We've all seen those things, how you do a weightlessness thing in space. And imagine if there was no gravity, you walk around tables, you put your foot one foot after the other, everything, you take into account gravity. It's a common denominator. Similarly, let us learn to live in this world where the story of narratives, perception will always be there. And we will have to factor this in. We will have to live with this as a reality. It wasn't there 20 years ago. It wasn't there 10 years ago, but it is now. I won't deny the fact, the way General Bakshi brought out, the way I think Bhatia also mentioned between the olden wars, olden eras, different wars, they had different ways of creating these perceptions. But today we are talking of everyone is an info warrior with a small mobile in your hand. We are negotiating narratives all the time. So we will have to master it. We cannot leave this space vacant. If you leave it vacant, somebody will fill it up, and it will not be to your liking. To be effective, it has to be very catchy. When we talk of a narrative, look at there was a stand with Kashmir thing that people have created. Somebody has created a very effective. Someone has seen it. It's a takeoff on an iPhone Apple ad. So we have to be catchy in doing it, and not some of our things appear like an official bulletin. Let's take the effort and time and money that we have put Indian government, Indian state and government center put together has put into change over the decade. But our narrative is very poor. We are not able to put it out. Whatever we do, we are not able to put that out, that narrative out. And that is why that space is being filled by the other side. Let me make a brief mention also to what General Bhatia alluded to. He spoke about the Balakot strike. Look at the difference that we had between the surgical strike of 2016, where everything was choreographed well in terms of announcements by the DGMO, a specific announcement after having spoken to the Pakistan DGMO. We did this for this reason, and we don't want to expand it. The onus will be on you. Whereas in Balakot, I will not discuss what happened, that we actually won the battle and lost the war kind of thing, because after a good strike, we were not able to capitalize it in Infospace very well. Now, while we've been talking about this, beyond just our issues with Pakistan and Kashmir, we have to think bigger. Now, let's look at the narrative of China, the regional or the geopolitical balancing in the region. India, as a country, we must expand our horizons and think of something beyond just looking at getting hyphenated with Pakistan. Also, let us see that while I just now spoke for the last 5 minutes about the information war, infospace, but info war or infospace is just one aspect. There are so many angles to this cyber warfare. Just like General Ben Israel said in another reference, we let me quote you an anecdote that happened sometime last year. One of our power plants in Delhi shut down. When the power plant was shut, they contacted uh, the contractor who done it, the vendor, and he said, yes, it is shut because you have not renewed your whatever it was, the yearly subscription or maintenance or whatever. So they said, okay, we'll do it. It is a weekend. We'll do it by Monday. They said, okay, then it will also come on Monday. But then, weekend or no weekend, they swung into action. They actually did it after a few hours, and it was a big issue in the capital. For several hours, the power plant was shut. As soon as the money was deposited in the account, a message was sent. The money has been deposited. The power plant started working immediately. Where was the contractor? He was in China. So you see, this tells us the magnitude of the interconnected world that we live in. Technologies, the emerging technologies affect every walk of life, like a couple of speakers brought out in the first session itself. So are we really looking at only the kinetics? We don't, those days, like General Bakshi brought out very correctly, they had to do a North African campaign, they had to do a sea lion to create an aura of deception. Whereas today, our infrastructure, our power grids, our railways, our banking, everything can be targeted sitting at some place. So we must create that kind of digital awareness. Our digital aspirations are also natural, but we also must then enact laws, create structures and processes for its exploitation. We have to realize that this is something not only it's a reality, it is something that, to put it very bluntly, we are a little too late. As we read about it, we know that China has been sitting and watching our government structures, our private sector. It has been watching our private sector. It has infiltrated in everything, and even some of our defense networks. We wouldn't be surprised if they're sitting there. In that case, we really need to make sure that we get our act together. We think beyond just getting hyphenated with Pakistan on one issue. We really need to create that structure, those processes, and we need to do it in synergy with each other. Cyber command is a crying need. And look at the importance US and countries like US and China have given to this aspect. We need, in our country, we still have, of course, a cyber agency is a small fledgling thing that has started, but thank God it has started. There are officers and there are luminaries sitting in this who are dealing with this, and I would urge them that all these structures or these fields, these technologies, there are no boundaries, so we cannot be working in silos. We really need to get our act together, whether it is the military, whether it is the critical information infrastructure or the non-critical information infrastructure, because really even the non-critical ones are vital to our way of life. So thank you very much. I would only like to end with saying that we need to work together and not get into what should I say, use the word, pardon a little retweaking. We don't have to do a blockchain with each other. We don't have to work in silos. Thank you very much. And now I will like to invite our panelists. I don't think Daniel Cohen is here. Am I right, sir? Yeah. Right. So let me move on to the next panelist. I have great pleasure in inviting Major General Bipin Bakshi, a friend, a school type, He's a sapper and a paratrooper. He was the additional director general of in the National Security Guard (NSG) and also in the NCC in the Northeast. He held the same appointment of an ADG. A prolific writer and a very enthusiastic soldier, as I've known him, that you can make out by his mustache. So all the very best to you, and over to you. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are.
A very good evening to all. Namaste, Shalom, and Erev Tov. It's a great honor to be on this panel with such eminent people, and I'm extremely grateful to General Bhatia as well as General Arora for organizing this and for getting me here. So as General Dua was just mentioning, I worked in the Union territories of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh pretty often, about 5 times. But one critical one was when I was the information warfare lead in the rank of a brigadier, where I handled the information warfare issues of the territories of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, which included the Pakistan border, the China border, and the counter-terrorist operations all happened there. And as you mentioned, I've been in the Para Brigade for 5 years, in the NSG for almost 3 years, and I've just finished my PhD in the subject role of information warfare in India's national security. So with that as a backdrop, I'll come on to today's issues. This particular webinar has been very well designed, and the second point in the key focus areas is to define the actors and also to discuss the appropriate approach or response to these, which is what I will be talking about. And it is my position that the actions in information warfare taken by inimical forces, as well as the actions which a state has to take in response, go beyond the cyber domain. So I'll talk about that as I go along. We're all aware of the Unrestricted Warfare book, almost 20 years old, by the 2 Chinese colonels. And General Bhatia also made a mention just now about the 3 warfares of China. If you see, legal, psychological warfare and media warfare are in the psychological domain and in the information domain, while they may be riding on the cyber domain. So our actions have to be looking at the cyber domain, but maybe a little beyond. With that as a backdrop, I'll shift over to a small presentation on information warfare. So as we are aware, what information warfare is all about, and as I said, I will be talking about a little bit about who are the information warriors, which will include the attackers and the defenders. And I'll also be talking about how do we go about securing Infospace. Dr. Otto did make some mention earlier about what actions the nation must take in the counterterrorism domain. I'll be speaking the actions to be taken in the information domain. This also has been spoken about, that how we went in the personal communication space, from writing letters to emails, then to messages. So far as public information went, and the state signaling apparatus went, from smoke signals to drum beats to printing to radio, which was mentioned, and finally TV. But now even that has probably gone into the mobile telephone. So while we earlier said that the pen is mightier than the sword, I would now say it is the mobile which is mightier than the sword. This is a single device which is used for all these purposes. So is it only communication on the mobile? Are we using it for networking? Is it public information? Or is it a broadcast agent? Or is it a mix of all 3? So with this preamble, I'll come to what are the information warriors. Nation states are using information warfare. This was touched about by General Bhatia also, and doctor who spoke about the Russian intervention in the US elections. Very much it is happening. Non-state actors are also actors. The Vatican, just about a week back, the computer of the Vatican were hacked because China wants to break its connection with an underground church. And in the non-state actor space, the technological titans are also being accused of having too much power. They are believed to be invading the privacy of an individual. But I state that there is a very thin line between individual privacy and national security, because the same tools which are being used, the same methods which are being used, to pry into individual lives can also be used to deter and to attack a nation at the level which we've been talking about. So this has also been mentioned that the whole aim of information warfare is to influence the perception with the aim of modifying policy and maybe achieve its objective without firing a bullet. So what are we in this game? Are we the victims? Are we being targeted? Or are we also the weapons? General Huda, in an article almost 2 years back, has made a mention that while we are being targeted, at times we also become part of the problem. We are the weapons because we pass on information without checking its own veracity. Further, of course, we have the terrorist organization. This was already spoken on at length in the first session. I will talk about a little more about the last bullet. That is, at present, who are the people who are being used to counter the information warfare, whether it is by an adversary state or whether it is by the terrorist. So on the one hand, we are using cyber professionals. And on the other hand, we are looking at some people who have experience in the public information space. And we are trying with these two categories of people to resist the attack in the information warfare space. But as Jaldua just mentioned, we need a much more synergy in this game to be able to counter. So we've heard a lot about what is going wrong, but we would like to hear a little more about what we have to do as a nation. I'll not spend more time on this. We are all aware it's the fifth domain of warfare, but the only thing which I want to point out is that an information warfare attack of the nature we've been speaking about the whole evening does not violate the laid down international laws, because they are laws of armed conflict. And an international law has not been violated. The sovereignty of a nation has not apparently been violated in these attacks. So it is difficult to get an international action against the perpetrator. So where does that leave us? It leaves almost every nation to fight the information war on its own. We cannot expect any other nation to help us. So there are varying ways which all the nations are adopting. And we are aware that the whole aim is to win a battle without fighting. And we've heard this about China. We have not been talking much about China today, except in passing. We are all aware of how China has had information warfare right from the time of Sun Tzu. And the famous quote is, to be able to subdue the enemy without fighting. I mean, this has been with them for thousands of years. And how are they doing it? We have heard about the three warfare strategy where they are using these three elements. I will not touch upon them more out here, but I would like to mention that they have a very, very focused organization in this game. It is the second Beru of the third department, which does information warfare. In a report which was done about 5-6 years back, this building in Shanghai was found, which is a 12-story building with about 2,000 people who are engaged in computer network operations alone. Another view where the report, which is the Mandiant report, mentions particularly that these 4 exhaust pipes you see are of generators to make sure that computer network operations go on unhindered. They have also gone onto the militia route. So this is a photograph of one of their offices of the People's Militia IW department. So as what was being mentioned by Jandua, that they are taking in the civilian experts. They are hiring and militarizing or using a TA concept to get people where they have a political officer and a military officer sitting together, and they're recruiting people. This is one of the functions held about 5-6 years back, where they recruited the People's Militia to start doing information warfare. Coming on to a little bit about UK, around 2 years back, there was an event held by the same group who's doing this one, that is General Bhatia St. George and General Arora's IMR. And there was a British speaker, Brigadier Greg Williams, who expounded on the British concept of information warfare. And what they are talking about is that IW is not isolated, it is interwoven, but more importantly, they are talking about shifting from air, land, sea maneuver to information maneuver. It's a critical part of battle. And they have restructured the national security architecture. They have an information maneuver command they were talking about. And they have said that information is the lifeblood of the battlefield. I'll go a little faster here. So we are clear that national security has gone beyond military conflict. There are multifarious threats. And it is one of the points in my thesis and my paper that we have to recognize information security as a critical part of national security. The Russians have done this. They have stated in the National Security Strategy, December 15, that informational security is part of the national security strategy. No other nation has done this so far. And they have delegated this to the Federal Guard in Russia, and they're very serious about information warfare. We've heard something about it earlier in the evening. I've also written a small paper on this where I have mentioned the same issue, that we have to realize that national security will be critically affected by information security. I'll talk a little more also about what information warfare is and what we should do about it. So information warfare is beyond cyber warfare. It is psychological and cyber and electronic in nature, and it's a mix of the three. Cybersecurity in isolation will not give you the defense or deterrence against this warfare. So what are our structures? We have the response for non-critical, which is just spoken. There's a CERT-in, Computer Emergency Response Team India, on the left. There is a protection center, which is the National Critical Information Protection Center, which is here. Now, these two are the two main issues. And there are many other verticals within the government. They are loosely connected and, or I would say, quite well connected to the two other verticals. The National Cyber Security Coordination Center is now coming up to coordinate these issues. The present government is doing a lot in this regard. And as we are aware, there is a National Security Council Secretariat headed by the National Security Advisor. And there is a National Cyber Security Coordinator who is going to look into all these issues. But where do we go from here? We have to look at strategic communication. And there is a strategic communication division coming up. And by Jan Dua, in fact, just now, that the best method to counter this information warfare is to ourselves be playing in this space. So strategic communication is the best method. And I'm happy to mention that a strategic communication division is now coming up within the NSCS, where we need to exploit social media as a tool of information warfare. There's also a small paper which I've written on the same subject. So I will now come on to some of the conclusions which I would like to mention here. Come back, I can see me. Yeah, I'll just wrap up. I'm just coming to the conclusion. I think I've already mentioned that national security architecture has to include our actions in the information warfare domain. We need to have a whole of nation approach. And we are doing that now. The government, the military, the academia, and the media, I hope, will be coming together in this information warfare space. So I'll just wind up with that. Daitra Hota, and very good evening.
Thank you, Bipin. That was very well covered, and thank you for that nice presentation, which was which made things very clear. And you covered a lot of canvas in short time. I realize all of us do want more time than we are allotted, but then we must try and stick to that. Thank you. You made a couple of very good points before I go to the next speaker about there is no international law being violated. So actually, there can't be an internationally coordinated reaction, and every country actually has to fend for itself. You also spoke a lot about what the Chinese are doing and what the Russians are doing, especially the fact that Russians are the only country who have included info warfare strategy as a part of national security strategy. So, this is where we are going. And I myself mentioned about what USA has taken the National Cyber Command was taken out of the structure of security, and the NSA was placed in charge of the national security, the Cyber Command, only to give it that place of importance. So I would also reiterate that, the National Cyber Coordinator, General Pant, is here. I heard that. So it's really important for us to get our act together in that sense. A lot of good things are happening, but much more needs to be done. Thank you, Bipin. And now I will move to... so before I start going further, I'm going to tell you a small anecdote. When I was Corps Commander, I think it was 4 years ago, one day I was told that one young reporter wanted to see me. I was intrigued, and I did give time for that. So this young girl walks into my office, and I was very surprised. And she was going all alone by herself, and she wanted to go to Tangdhar, or if I remember correctly, she wanted to go on to the LOC. I said, "How are you going to travel all alone?" No, she, "Main kar lungi, and I will travel alone, and I will do this and that." So I did help her. I was taken in by her enthusiasm. And then on, we have just kept loosely in touch. So, and that young lady is Snehashree Mukherjee. Thereafter, she went on to Israel for her research and studies, further studies, and now she is an expert in her own right. Very nice to see you here. I mean, see you in a virtual space. Not that we haven't seen each other. Snehashree Mukherjee, I will let you introduce more about yourself on the substantive terms yourself. And over to you. Strictly 10 minutes.
Before I start, I would like to thank Sanjoz and IMR to give me this platform to share my views on the topic disinformation model active in India. To introduce myself, back in India, I was with The Statesman as a senior sub-editor when I met Sir, Lieutenant General Satish Dua. And after that, I was with WION as a in the special investigative team. Now I'm in Israel. I'm doing my own research on information warfare. And that's it. Today, I would like to talk about disinformation model active in India. So I would like to touch upon the concept in a very basic model with the help of a presentation. So I will switch to the presentation now. So before we dive deep, we have to understand that when we are looking at India, we are talking about 28 states, 8 union territories, 22 officially recognized languages, and a population of 1.3 billion. The median age of India's population is 28.4 years. In other words, India is witnessing youth boom, a perfect ground for disinformation. Since we are talking about cyber information warfare, when we are talking about disinformation model, I was talking about that we have to understand that we are talking about India. So we are not talking about just one language or two or three states. We are talking about 28 states, 8 union territories, 22 officially recognized language, and a population of 1.3 billion. The median age of India is 28.4 years, and it really matters. I'll go on why it matters. And since we are talking about information warfare, the digital penetration of India is 50% as of 2020. Disinformation in itself is just audio, video, image, or text. It's nothing except this. Basically, the 4 formats of information. Depending on the packaging, it could be fake news, it could be misinformation, or facts presented in twisted and biased perspective. Its motive is to influence a section of people. Its motive is to influence a section of people, and the mission is thus we sometimes can easily be deluded in a world of narrative exposure, set and repeated by algorithms. I highlight on this, set and repeated by algorithms. Today and every day, our mission is to protect these youth, especially by bursting the game of information warfare in order to protect our future. And this is the reason we are having this webinar and we are talking about this in public. For the scope of this webinar, I would like to discuss disinformation model active in 3 major spheres, which affects the national health of India. So the first is trust in public institution. This is a Western concept. It basically indicates that whether or not you can trust the pillars on which your country is established. We all are aware of the 4 pillars of democracy: the legislature, executive, judiciary, and media. Low trust on this organization sets up a vicious circle where the public easily falls prey to disinformation, resulting in lower trust. And this goes on. The damage caused is very steep, especially in a democratic setup. The example which I would like to share is from politics, and the slide actually by mistake it went into that. So I think by now you know what I would be able to, I will be talking about. But it's not a political example. So disinformation here, which I'm trying to focus upon, the disinformation is that RSS is a terrorist organization. The fact is RSS was banned 3 times in India. It is not a terrorist organization. I have shared a picture here. This is from Twitter. We can see that they are discussing RSS and they're comparing it with ISIS. It usually looks like a usual chatter which happens on Twitter. And we should not give so much importance to this. These are the hashtags. This is the second photograph. Now it gets a bit serious because now we are having image in a time where facial recognition is there of Indian children online. The reason I'm sharing a daily routine of RSS Shaka here is because the disinformation is that Indian children are brainwashed against Muslims. But usually this is the daily routine of RSS Shaka. Now, this is where we can see cross-border action based on disinformation. It's getting a little serious. We see that there is some action which is taking place. Now we are out of Twitter. We are into the media world. This is a news piece which talks about a Pakistani lawmaker on Wednesday, 5th of this month, urged the UN and the international community to designate the Hindu nationalist RSS party as a terrorist organization. Sidelining from the political angle, the definite result in this case is evident. Polarization between 2 sections of India, pro-RSS and anti-RSS. Which brings me to the second sphere, which I would like to discuss, is radicalization and extremism. In current times, disinformation associated to this sphere has been on a steady rise. The extent of radicalization and extremism depend primarily on 3 factors, which is listed here: the level of exposure, the psychological position, and surrounding environment. Cyber plays a crucial role in India, India's second most populated country. Turning sentiments into echo chambers is not a difficult job in India. Just for the sake of discussion, let's imagine there is a third state financing to create narratives in order to disrupt the democratic setup of India. So on what lines the narratives would be created? Racial, ethnic, and religious differences, misrepresenting events to alienate minorities, and if they want to recruit for sleeping cells or OGWs, as we call in Kashmir, what is the sentiment that they need to invoke? You're wronged, you need to do something, state is your enemy. This is few examples, again from Twitter. We see that this is a group called Indian Muslims, and we see they have 24.8K followers, and they have a writing which says that they cannot accept or agree to situation which is half Islam and half Jahil. Jahil is a Hindi or Urdu word which basically says that they cannot stay with somebody who are not civilized. I go to the other picture. This is again chatters, a radicalized chatter. I won't say this is extremist, but it is radical. Now this is illusionary effect. Illusionary effect is something which we have seen time and again in Kashmir. You repeat a truth in an attempt that you think that one day it will be, you repeat a falsehood in an attempt that you think that one day it will be accepted as truth. So here we see Pakistan's PM saying that one day Kashmir will be freed, and soon. This is a press release by Government of Pakistan, Islamabad, and I will focus more onto it and see that how words are misrepresented. The model of disinformation. If we see on our left-hand side, there is military siege, they are highlighting that this is the terms which they have to use. Who have to use this? The TV channels, radios, and other public domain. This also Twitter. And when we talk about radical and extremism, this is how it finally gets. I'm not going to repeat all this, but just as an example that this is also happening. If we see on the left-hand side, there's something called Park Frontiers. They say join Twitter trend. This is a perfect example of echo chambers, how it is organically created. Something which is organically created cannot be easily recognized by algorithms which otherwise they identify bots or other such trends. I move on to my third sphere, which I would like to talk about, that is selling or peddling ideology or psychological manipulation. We all know what is an ideology. An ideology is a set of opinions or belief of a group or an individual. Very often, ideology refers to a set of political beliefs or a set of ideas that characterize a particular culture. Ideology can be religious, political, philosophical. It is basically a concept of what is life. For example, good life. What is good life? For some, it may be what is represented on left-hand side. For some, it is on what is represented on right-hand side. But why am I talking this under disinformation? Disinformation sometimes piggyback on propaganda, and not all outcomes has to be radical. The purpose is simple. Believe my version of the story, because your belief will make me rich. If someone is selling an idea, they're investing time, resources, and funding on it, and nothing in the world comes for free. It's a good time to look around at all the free stuff to which we are hooked to. The ideology can be anything. It can be a candidate in the next election. It can be, a candidate in the next election, I'm pointing towards election manipulation. It can be an ideology regarding what is the perfect way of life. It can be the definition of a beauty, definition of prosperity. It can be product which completes you or makes your life easier, etc. Marketing is not toxic, but cyber enables coupling of propaganda with disinformation. We do not realize, but our choices shape our economy at each step. You might ask that where is disinformation in all this? But disinformation was never about only fake news or misinformation. It is systematically misleading the public or leading the public to their version of story. The third sphere is a very gradual process, so I do not have examples to show you here. It goes over years. It's a part of our daily life. It is our conception of perfection or way of life. Almost like it's natural to us that if we want to search something, we Google. These are certain examples which you can question yourself. Disinformation in general, this operation in general are always multi-layered, which means it has multiple approaches and consequences. The source is not just social media. It can be traced and found in almost all sources on which we rely for daily information. News, scholarly articles, reports, research-oriented papers, policy papers, movies, documentaries, short videos, social media. It is not a zero-sum game, meaning it doesn't mean that the credibility of these sources are permanently compromised because of such incidents. We finally come to the main question, the important question, that how do we combat disinformation? We need to question the source, question the motive. Example, why is this narrative amplified, or why am I seeing similar content on multiple platforms? We have to remember that repeating false statement doesn't make it a fact, and beware of illusory truth effect. Fourth and most important is this information inciting hate or doubt against any person or community? The world is as we see. It is important that we protect the peace within and outside and safeguard the very fabric of our democratic state. And with that, I end my presentation.
Thank you, Sneha, for a very nice presentation. You got things out very clearly and very concisely. Thank you for a good presentation as well. I am now. I don't think the speaker is Daniel Cohen there.
No, that's all, sir.
All right. So I will just quickly go over to some questions that are there in case there are. I know we are a little out of time. So I am going to read a few questions that I see in the right, and then I'll come. Let me read a few questions together, and then we take them or bunch them up. Is abstaining from social media? This is from Imam Mukherjee. Is abstaining from social media, including Facebook, the way ahead for cybersecurity? Why can't we deal smart than dumb? Uh, Very informative. Okay, I'm going to skip the comments. The question: what, in your view, is the end state that we are looking at in Kashmir, and what is the roadmap? Though it's a little away from this topic, we'll see how we attempt this. Why is our narrative poor, as mentioned by General Dua? Is it a political compulsion, or we lack talent and wherewithal? Why this helplessness? Uh, Next, I think diplomats are failing. Sorry, I'll leave that out. I think diplomats should be equipped with more power to take proactive decisions, which would be of national interest. Next one is, sir, in my humble view, manipulated narrative was always there. It was a changed medium. Now social media has a stronger presence than press handouts, hence the importance of realigning IW, where social media plays a majestic role. Very good. So there are one or two more. Let me just try and bunch up these. Uh, let me, before I come to the panelists, let me try and tackle one or two myself. So when And also, there is another question which I shouldn't forget, so I'll say this now. Can we have General Bipin's PowerPoint presentation, please? No prize for guessing who can answer that question. So, may I request both actually, since we have given good presentations, may I request you to share that with the presentations with General Dr. Arora, and we can go further and others can access them. Arora, sir, I suppose that will be fine if they can share it
Yes,
with
sir.
you. Yes,
Yes, sir.
very well. Okay. Now, I'll just take some of these because a lot of these things are very connected. Uh, I have said it earlier that we need to engage. We can't shy away from this. So, my blunt answer to the question saying that is abstaining from social media the way ahead? No, sir, it is not. The question that I was tackling is that why is our narrative poor? As mentioned by Jan, there was one question. The second one is it good to run away from the Facebook and other social media platforms? My my take is that, like I said, we need to recognize this as a reality, that this battle of narrative, the info space, and rather than go away from it, we will have to learn how to deal with it. Our narrative is poor because of this reason, because we feel that we need to go away. In fact, we need to become more proficient at it. We need to, for the battle of narratives, we need to involve professionals. I said in passing, and I'll elaborate now. If you see how they have put out, and I will share this link if someone hasn't seen it. We will see how they have put out the narrative of Stand with Kashmir. It says in 107 seconds we will give you the details. Why 107 seconds? Because iPhone made that ad in 107 seconds. It's so catchy, so racy, and in that, incidentally, they say army has committed 55,000 raves, this, that, and it's so catchy in a rap style. And what do? We put out in last year, so many years, we have done so much percentage, so much figures, like an official bulletin. It doesn't, nobody wants to look at it twice. So why are we doing it? Because we are doing it our way. My take is we need to get in professionals. It's not a job for us. The youngsters will do it better and they are professionals. We need to go into somebody suggested this model of PA and specialist to get in a different manner. I think that's the way to go. Okay. Now, okay. Then I'm going to read the next question. Considering the misinformation, how shall we start dealing with the phrase terrorist for one is a freedom fighter for the others, mainly in case of Hamas, Hezbollah, and terrorists in JNK? Uh, billion-dollar companies and political parties build their short-term narratives by 22-year-old guys. Yes. So who put this Mayank? Mayank Kukreti put this out. Now, this is exactly what I said a few minutes ago. I have this question has come up now. Okay, so I I agree that we need to hand it over to the experts or professionals. We need to outsource this. This cannot be done by us all sitting in government structures. I hope someone takes through with that. Okay, now, General Bipin Bakshi, can I ask you to tackle this question? Considering this misinformation, how do we deal with terrorists for one, is it freedom fighter for others? Mainly in case of Hamas, Hezbollah, or terrorists in JMK. Over to you.
Sorry, sir, which one is that?
They say that it's an open question. If you see by Anurag Sharma, the third or fourth from the bottom. Got it?
Okay. Actually, I would say the ex-GOC 15 core would be better placed to answer that. While I'm thinking about this one, can I answer a little bit more about what was asked by Imran Mukherjee, sir, as to how we should use social media?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, sir. I'll endorse whatever General Dua said. We have been, working together and probably attending a few sessions on the similar manner. I'd just like to add two things. Remaining on social media is an excellent channel of informing your own troops as to what is happening with their own army. It is the fastest way to get the correct information out to your own people, number one. Number two, it's an important feedback channel that if you have your people on social media, you can understand what is happening in their minds. And thirdly, while we were in the NSG, social media is actually an excellent tool for the counter-terrorists and for the security forces. As you're aware, even as far as 8-9 years back, when Osama bin Laden was killed, the first information to the world went out by a tweet in the late night by a Pakistani person. So we should definitely not shut ourselves off from social media. How we manage it, whether it will be only units which will handle it or certain particular people who are nominated, or we ban everybody or we permit somebody, that's a decision to be taken. But the point to remember is it's a very powerful tool both ways, for and against us. We have to learn how to balance it. Coming on to this point about misinformation, yes, definitely. All of us who have been there in Kashmir, there is no good terrorist and bad terrorist. We are all aware that many of the issues which are being militated against are actually manufactured. So the best answer is good governance, which is now happening, better governance, and better delivery of justice, better facilities to the people, so you make the problems go away. What Snehashree was mentioning in her presentation, that to give a better life, so if you're able to cut away the cause of militancy, you will have less and less recruits. It will take time, but it has to be a very, very measured approach. And I think right now, all will agree with me, we are on the right direction. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Bipin. Okay, so like you suggested, I will take on that question of one man's terrorist, the other man's freedom fighter. But before that, I will give you a fair warning to Snehashree. Sneha, yes, I'm going to ask you to tackle this question. Please think about it the next 2 minutes. The one that I see now is by Shubhangi. PhD on fake news detection regarding national security. Have you got that question?
Yes, sir. Okay. And also there is one more on illusionary effect.
Yes, and I was going to say that illusionary effect. So these two you take on after I finish answering this. Okay, before I tackle that question on terrorist versus freedom fighter, this keeps going up to the next question. Somebody pops in a question, so the whole thing shifts down. As long as I'm taking another one. As long as the counter narratives are more than our narratives, we will always be second in info warfare and perception management. This question is by General Patil. Now, the point I would like to make here, sir, at the expense of repetition, is that we have to understand that whatever is to be done, experts are better placed to do it. There are so many things that I can talk about, but I am just trying to learn on the fly. I think we need to sit down together with the experts to sell our thing. We sit down by ourselves and we say that, okay, we have created one hashtag and today we'll all put it out like that. It's done very boorishly. I'll say it very bluntly. Okay. Now, this important question of terrorists, for one is a freedom fighter, for the other, take example of JNK or Hezbollah. I think there is a very clear difference between a freedom fighter and a terrorist. Let's take the Indian freedom struggle. The freedom fighters. That's what the image that comes to our mind. You take any name, any freedom fighter, whether he followed ahimsa of Mahatma Gandhi and did not indulge in violence, or you take the militant varieties of Subhash Chandra Bose or Chandrasekhar Azad or Bhagat Singh or anybody who there were many more. Not one incident of anyone hurting, let alone killing any member of the public. But what is happening today is terrorism. They feel that to attract attention to their cause, they must do something. Forget violence in Kashmir that is being perpetrated at unimaginable scales. You look at gassing of a metro in London, the subway, or bombing of that building, the Empire State Building. No, what people who are not connected with battle of war, people unconnected, just because it will get you good mileage, you are doing that. That is terrorism. And freedom fighters don't wage this kind of unholy war. I hope I've made that point clear. I hope I've answered the question. All right, Snehashree, over to you.
Yes, sir. Sir, I would first like to tackle the question, how can we about the illusionary effect. The question asks that how can we tackle the illusionary effect created by Pakistan for Kashmir? We need to learn to counter the manipulation what is done by adversary. Yes. First, we have to focus on all the radio channels which is there and playing in Kashmir from Pakistan. And there are time and again we have moments when internet is not working. Then there are a lot of other ways of communications through servers and other ways which has to be handled. So first we have to recognize the source. There are modern ways of segregating what is good and what is bad. So, and I think it's all being done. So that's the first thing. Second is, I think, Shubhangi Rastogi. She's asking about what is your view to tackle fake news using artificial intelligence at national level? Artificial intelligence, okay, AI single-handedly cannot tackle fake news. We have deep data analysis for this. Why deep data analysis? Because we teach, and also machine learning, we teach the computer that this is bad and this is good. And then AI does the thing it increases the speed basically. So that is how it is done. There are a lot of fact checks which are coming across, fact check companies which is out of India. So they are doing it, but definitely we have to do it before the footprint of the fake news increases. That means that we have to recognize it when it is originating. So this is where we still have to work on in India at national level.
Right. Thank you very much, Snehashree.
Can I interrupt for a minute?
Sorry?
Can I interrupt for a minute? There's a question by General Rajesh Pant, who's the National Cyber Security Coordinator for the nation. It says, it's a very interesting question actually. He says, in our original plans, health was never a critical sector, and COVID-19 changed that. So we're looking at non-traditional threats now. In Sanjay did a paper on that also. So So it's very difficult to differentiate between critical and non-critical sectors right now, because even education is a critical sector if you really look at it. Could you have any comments from the experts, please?
All right. So the question is, in our original plans, health was not a critical sector. COVID has changed that. Can we segregate critical and non-critical sectors in that context? A very, very good question. And I'll be very frank. When I was glancing over the questions, I just saw the word COVID and I left it. Thank you, General Bhatia sir, for pointing it out to me. And I would have owed General Pant an apology if I had actually skipped it. When I saw the word COVID, so I just left it. So please pardon me on that. This is a very good question, and I think it is increasingly showing us that the lines between what we consider critical and non-critical are blurring. Well, I said in technologies, lines are blurring because there are no boundaries in technologies. There are no boundaries now between the military and the civil usage or threats in these technological fields. Similarly, the extent of repetition, critical and non-critical also starts blurring. For example, if we have identified power, transport, railway, banking, some of them as critical, can you say certain other things which are non-critical, like you pointed out, the medical ones, sir, the medical issues? I think we will have to take a more comprehensive and a holistic view to make our systems robust. We will have to be able to work through such, what should I say, challenges and deterrences and attacks. We will have to make our systems robust on one hand, and on the other hand, be able to do it, be able to negotiate through that. How do we do it? I think the first thing that we need to do is to get everyone together in one umbrella. Today, I think no one better than you to realize, General Pant, because he is the National Cyber Coordinator. And I have worked closely with his predecessor earlier when we were setting up this National Cyber Command, which is now been started as an agency. We know how difficult it is to get everyone to sit at the same table. At the same time itself is a task by itself, let alone actually working. Then there are protocols and everything together. And that is the reason why I would like to use this opportunity also to make a point that the moment we say all these are attacks and then we must defend ourselves, more than kinetic attacks, if a country can enforce its will on the other nation by any means, and these means are much easier to accomplish than by using missiles and weapons, all the more reason if this is going to be defense and attack, any mind of warfare, I think we need to put everything under one umbrella and we need to give a place of importance to a cyber command or whatever structure, and all the verticals, all other organs need to work in close concert and synergy on that. Would you like to add anything, Bipin? Or I will then request even General Bhatia to please comment on that.
Yes, sir. Since it is coming from the domain which I've been studying, this concept of having a critical information infrastructure being handled separately and the rest of it being handled separately, it flows from the 2011 amendment of the IT Act. I think it is a manifestation of the typical way that we go about things in an incremental manner. We could have looked at the thing more holistically, but we probably were looking at the level of threat, the level of effect, and the amount of resources required to make sure that your national critical information infrastructure is well protected. Now, that was 10 years back. Now, we need to constantly review it. And now with General Pant there, and we have General Bajpai, who is working with us in Northern Command, looking after NCIPC. I'm sure we need to review it. And any plan needs to be reviewed periodically. So if you have set up NCIPC in 2000, 14, I think, or 15. It was a work in progress in 13, and the very first head happens to be General Bajpayee. But the plans were laid as way back as 2011-12. So there's a good time to review, and I think what Jan Du also said that the right time to do it is now.
Can I take a minute, please?
Yes,
all said and done, it will have to be threat and resource based. We would like everything to be critical or non-critical. It's not going to happen. Our resources are limited, so we'll have to prioritize on ensuring that our priority sectors are better protected. The defense is better, the deterrence is better than all sectors. If we think that we can protect everything, I think that's not going to be possible. So I think we'll have to divide it into a few lots. Say priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, or as we said, red, amber, and green. Something could not be in non-critical sector, but there's certain critical. Health has become suddenly very critical, and when you look at non-traditional security threats, you'll find that there are many other sectors, and education, I think, is a very critical sector because education will influence everyone. So we'll have to look at all these things in a very holistic manner, and that is where I think the National Cyber Security Center comes into being. Thank you. That's all.
Sir, I have a small 1 minute comment to make on this. The point at issue, what Bipin General Bakshi also brought out, is that can we have the luxury of having critical, non-critical, and then there's a defense component separate? Because since the lines, the boundaries are blurring, and in fact, if I take what point General Bhatia made, that we have to allocate resources and we can't take sort of give equal importance to all. So I would say all the more reason that we can't have everything under different silos headed by different ministries. So we have METI coming in for the non-critical part. The critical infrastructure is somebody else. We have the NTRO and other agencies there. Then we have the defense with the Defense Cyber Agency, or whenever it becomes the command. I think all the more reason. And then the National Cyber Coordinator is left coordinating. Coordination is one aspect. It is almost like the Army, Navy, and Air Force for several years. We have been coordinating by this structure called COSC. Obviously, it has not worked that other countries have gone into integration. So, in a similar manner, I don't know what shape that integration takes. I'm not a technical man. But I think in a similar manner, these technologies and we will be left far behind unless we put them together. There is a reason why every other country and every other big countries actually put things together. We are going to work with by coordinating, and pardon my saying so, but in our country, no one listens to no one. No one ministry listens to another. So I feel that's not the way to go. Thank you. Okay, I am going to. I think I'll just see if there is something very important right now. Okay, I think I want to take this opportunity to thank the St. George and IMR, Bhatia sir, Arora sir, and your teams that made this happen. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. I really enjoyed listening to all the talks and interventions, and I thank the speakers for such educated talks. Thank you very much, sir. Over to you, Jan Bhatia.
I just said thank you very much, and Arora sir, please, all yours.
Thank you. It remains for me to thank everybody for having attended this event, but particularly I would like to thank first Snehashree Mukherjee, who gave the idea for this event and was also instrumental in inviting General Professor Israel and David Otto to speak at this event. When she first gave this idea and put it across, General Bakshi also mulled over it. I'm talking about General Dr. G.D. Bakshi. They discussed this and put it across to St. George, and I'm aware General Bhatia agreed for two reasons. One is that Center for Joint Warfare Studies has been conducting this series on information warfare and more particularly on the use of social media by the armed forces. And second, that General Bhatia himself has dealt with information warfare in the army. General J.D. Bakshi also has been a brigadier information warfare in Northern Command. And General Bipin Bakshi has just finished his doctorate on information warfare. So it was suitable and apt. And had we known that General Pant, the National Cyber Coordinator, would be attending, we would have perhaps extended and had him, requested him, invited him to be part of the panel of speakers. But this event has added luster to itself because of his presence and General Venki Patil, who is attending, and General Marwa, and a number of consultants and senior functionaries in the cyber information warfare domain. I could see from the participants list. We are thankful to all the participants for having spared their time to attend this event. Thanks very much to all the distinguished speakers who took time to address everybody. This event will be, the recording of this event edited suitably will be placed on YouTube for a larger audience. Some people have requested for copies of presentations. We will make arrangements. We have the email addresses and we will get in touch with you. Thank you once again and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, General.